Hi, Charlotte. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine myself too. It's been a week now, almost a week since the release show. How did it go?
It was such a special evening. I'm very glad with how it went, how everything came together. There were, of course, the expected nerves that belong to a debut show like this because it was over 2 hours of new material. So it was very exciting, but it was just fantastic to be on a stage again, and it was also great to see how many people had traveled, a lot of them from very far to be there for the show. So it definitely was a very, very special evening. You just said it's been a week. It doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like it was yesterday. I only just brought back like all of the merch. Like my living room was still full of boxes. So I'm still kind of coming down from it. Yeah.
What did you miss the most that you didn't expect from playing live, a full show?
I guess the performing together because like I have been making a lot of music in the time in between, but it's a very different experience from yeah, really the interactive aspect and the social aspect, and that kind of feeling of togetherness that you have when you're on a stage together, and then when you have an audience that responds to that, just kind of that energy that you get from other people around you on a stage like that. I guess that's what I miss the most. Yeah.
Well, you performed with former Delain members. What was it, well, for you more easy than to go with, well, a completely new band?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, we're very used to performing together. We're very used to doing everything around the shows together as well. And just very comfortable and familiar with each other. So it was rather special for me to have them on stage with me as well. And then, but then Sophia, who is the new guy, she did amazing too. So yeah, it was a good experience.
What was it like? Because, well, it was material from your two solo albums, one from previous year and this year. Um, what was it like putting a set list together? Because, well, with Delain, you have a bunch of songs and many songs, and yet it's all the same genre. And now it's more a bit a mix of genres too. What was it like for you? How did you start with, well, the set list and with the songs that you wanted to perform?
I definitely had like six different versions of the set list of this evening. I guess since it is the first time since it's kind of like a release show, you want to perform as many songs as possible from the album. So what we kind of did is I grouped certain songs together, like certain songs that were in the same vibe. I grouped them together, and for a lot of them, I also really make them transition into each other. So you have like several blocks with their own kind of specific vibe during the set. And this is also one of the things I think it worked well, and from what I hear, at least, I think it worked well. But because it's a very long set. Like we played 22 songs, if I'm not mistaken, 23 maybe, and but it didn't feel long because it felt like you had these couple different blocks, and yeah, and those blocks are all very diverse. So yeah, we had to rearrange it every now and then, and there's a couple of songs that we actually didn't play in order to make room for other things that I really wanted to play. So, but we got almost all of it. Yeah, we played almost all of
Well,
it.
focusing on the blocks right now. What blocks did you have?
So we had an acoustic block with loads of clarinet in it, which was I Forget and Victor, and then we had kind of the opening block was kind of diverse in itself, but it was three songs put together. It was Superhuman, Human to Ruin, and it started with an intro that was especially made for it. It's called Ouverture. It was one of the songs of the month as well. We had 3 songs with Elisa, because 2 of our collaborations, one that is currently still Patreon exclusive, and one that is that was on Tales from 6 Feet Under Volume 1 called Lizzie. And the other one's called Fool's Parade, and we only just released that last month, or this month actually, exclusively to both of our patron communities. We had kind of like the heavy block, and yeah, then towards the end, when everyone's kind of more warmed up, you can get away with more like genre jumping, I guess, because people are already more in that mood. So towards the end, it did go from like Masterpiece, which is super poppy, to Soft Revolution, which is like more emotional. Yeah, so towards the end, it got a little bit more like it is on the records.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, yeah, we really tried to divide it with like a heavy block, like a more acoustic sounding block. We had 3 songs with Eliane Annemaat on cello, so those were put together as well. Yeah, and then some of those blocks kind of overlapped into each other. It was a puzzle. It was definitely a puzzle.
But you said it was a puzzle, but when you recorded and you released 2 albums, when you put together this set list, what do you think of? Well, what did the songs lead you to? What did they tell you? What sort of journey did you do during the recording of these 2 albums? If you look at the genres, if you look at the songs that you wrote during certain times, the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think with the first album, I think it wasn't really on my mind to ever perform it live. Because, way in the beginning, starting out, it was supposed to be like a thing that I did on the side with the songs that would never fit with Delain. And it was basically just supposed to be that. So just anything that is not near like the symphonic metal world. Towards the end of that first year, it became kind of more a full-time thing. But I think that it was only more recently that I've started thinking in terms of, hey, I've got this gig coming up. What kind of song would I want to play, during a live gig? And the very last song that we played, for example, it's called All You Are, and it is not on the 2 albums. But it is one that I specifically wrote as I want to write this specific type of song for this specific moment in a set list, and I wanted to convey this specific feeling. So I guess that
what sort of feeling did you want to convey?
So I wanted, because during a gig, I think one of the most, if you have like a very successful gig, in my experience, it's always that at the end of a successful gig, you have this kind of feeling of togetherness. And, basically, if you would get on a train with all of the people who were on that gig, they are kind of your friends, even if you don't know who they are. But it's like, oh, we all went to this gig and we all were in this thing together. So I really wanted it to be this kind of a something to hang on to that feeling. So it's a love song. It's all that you are, all that you will be, I'll keep you close to me, and all of my heart loves you forever until its final beat. It's kind of, even if we disperse, like if we all go our own way now, that was kind of the feeling that I wanted to convey. I wanted a song. So I also wanted it to have something that people could really sing along to, and they did, which was great. So, but yeah, I've only recently started to think in this way, and then it's always a challenge, because you want it to be like a combination of, like, I always have my little book with lyrics, that I just that I'm working on, and it's always like I would want something with that feeling, but I don't want to write it just for the show. It's also got to be something that is connected to these things that I've already written, these most emotional moments. So Yeah, sorry, I could go on about this.
No, it's really interesting to hear. If you said, well, that's what song that you wrote specifically for that time during the set.
Yeah.
What were the songs that you wrote specifically with playing live in mind of this album? Were there more the heavy orientated songs, or maybe what sort of songs? Is there some sort of? Can you say what?
No, like I said, that's only a more recent thing. Like this song, for example, the All You Are, that was released after Tales from 6 Feet Under Volume 2 was already complete. I did write the ouverture, or more kind of arranged it, with the show in mind. But I think that the things that were written, like especially with the show in mind, those are actually not the songs that are on
No?
the album. No. I was excited, there are certain songs where I was kind of looking forward to how is this going to be live, and those are mostly the heavier songs, because I feel like if you do like an electronic songs, like then if you have like an electronic drum sample, for example, and you play that sample live, then it's going to sound more or less the same. Well, if you have like a heavy song with acoustic drums, then it goes from a sampled thing to like the real thing in a live setting. So I guess I was most excited about how the heavier songs would translate to a live situation, and that was a really fun process
What was what was the biggest difference? Because you recorded most of the lines and the instrumental stuff, you programmed it.
Yeah.
What was for you the biggest difference in hearing these songs live, playing with by real people? What was the biggest difference?
I mean, it's more organic. Like for example, when we did, as maybe not the best example because Timo already played this on the record, but in Against All Odds, there's this tiny little break, and during the gig, people kind of applauded during that, so we could actually all look at each other, and we're just going to let this break last a little longer. Those kind of spontaneous things are things that happen, are the things that happen live when you play together live. So that's a difference. Also, just the level of, it's more human, because we made at a lot of places, like we had to go into the songs very deliberately and say, okay, so for example, a lot of these songs have they're very, very layered. So a lot of them have like 20 parts that you could play on keys, and then we had to I really sat down for this for an entire day with Sophia to go like, okay, what are like the main parts which are most important to play, and then for whatever you cannot play with 2 hands and 4 keyboards, what are we going to what do we feel like we really need to hear live? So what are we putting on tracks or whatever, and what are we going to just leave out in order to have it be more of a real life experience, So it's not like we play this one thing and the rest we just put on tape. Like we really went through all of the songs in that way, like thinking, what do we really, what can we all play? What do we really need aside from that? So for which songs do we have tracks, and how many do we want on there? And then what do we just leave out? And that process, I think, created like, that I think that made it possible to really have like that live experience, even though these are songs that were, made here in the basement, and that, 90% of it I played on like my little MIDI keyboard and tapped in. So I think that is a really big difference, to have that kind of more human version of the songs. Yeah.
that was what I was thinking. You referred to playing it all by yourself or tapping it in. No, that's what I was thinking. What was it like for you if you do one song per month and you just one song 1 month focusing on a whole song? How was there some general way of working? I mean, first with the vocal lines, maybe lyrics, or maybe a beat, or what was the one way of working? And was it maybe a bit claustrophobic too?
Not so much. I mean, it wasn't so much claustrophobic. Like towards the end, like I do start to feel like the pressure, and I'm also thinking of maybe ways that I could do it a tiny bit different in the future, because the thing that I really love about it is that it allows me to work like very, very spontaneously. What it looks like for me most of the time, I still work from like a chord melody lyric combo. Like that's usually the first thing that is there. And then sometimes I first finish what I feel like the main melody, song structure, lyrics should be, and then I kind of fill it in with the arrangement. And sometimes I kind of go chronologically. That's usually how it goes. I don't have many instances of doing like a whole song instrumentally and then seeing what am I going to, like it usually starts from the story, so to speak. And yeah, the way that I have been able to do that is just because I approached it in this very spontaneous way. So that means that that I did decide like, okay, you know, these drums are just going to be programmed drums, and whatever I do that is going to be the finished things. I mean, I did use like some production loops and things like that. So I did things in the arrangement of the tracks that if I had more time, I would want to take more time for them. Like I would really go over each part and say, okay, and now we give this to a drummer, and then they refine it, and then they play it in the studio. So in that sense, it is a very like shotgun production, because usually like I always like I set a date with Guido Albers, who does my mix and master. I make a date with him, like this is the mixing date, and then it's my job to make sure that I have a finished song before that. And usually I finish it like somewhere around or after midnight on the day before mixing day. So it's also like if it's finished, I don't have time to rethink things or like it's really like the song comes out and then that's it, and that's what it's going to be, which is great, and which is something that I really wanted for myself, because I used to be a person who like started a lot of ideas but never finished them. So now I've kind of learned to just finish things. But I've come to a point now where I also want to take time to really do things. I don't want to say properly, because I feel that would take away from the things that I've done now. But I also want to make some songs that get some time to just sit and marinate a little bit. And then I could go back and see, okay, is everything exactly where it needs to be? Do I want to replace like these and these and these, whatever, like sampled drums or... So I do want to get to a point where I can do that also.
So this phase, what you have been doing for the last 2 or 3 years,
yeah,
this phase is something that you will continue, or is it just some sort of phase that you will do, but afterwards you will?
No, what I think is that it will change a little bit. I think that because for now, up until now, I've always said the song is finished when I publish it on the Patreon, and I think it would be close to impossible to do both that and then on the same time work on an album where you do take more time for the material. So I think that I might change the setup a little bit, where it would be like this is the first version of the song, and then maybe I don't maybe I won't share the samples anymore on like socials and stuff. Like I've got to think this through because I don't know if this is, but and then it will be like a version A of the song, and then if I make an album, then I go back to them, and then I see, okay, how do I want to? So it would, and I think it would be interesting for patrons too, because one of the things that I also wanted to do when I got into this is involve people more in like the songwriting process and what it takes. But with the schedule of doing the song every month, I rarely had the time to say like, okay, and now I'm going to film like a nice little video about how I'm doing this. It was like, I have to get this done right now. So I think that in this way and treating them more like first versions of it, or like a decent like I'll still have it mixed and mastered. I'll make it like proper. But I think in that way it will also involve people more, because when then eventually there is an album, you know, they are the ones who like heard the very first version of the song. So I'm kind of thinking in this direction. So I do want to keep like the monthly schedule and deadline for myself, but then also allow myself to work on the songs after that.
And it's even more nice for them, because then they can anticipate if you really, well, altered the song and made it different, or is it still the same, or what did you put extra on it? Against All Odds, is it written about, well, the first love that you had, or is it some made-up story, or?
It's so what I usually do when things get a little personal is I take my own feeling, but what I put around it can be fiction. Like I've done this with a lot of things, like for example, Phantom Touch as well. I was feeling like really anxious and nervous, but it felt weird to put that kind of all out there in a very literal way. And also, I don't want to necessarily have the songs to be about myself. A, it feels kind of weird and egocentric, and B, I want more people to be able to relate to it. So I'll take the feeling and then I'll harness it in something that I think makes it more accessible and relatable for people. So Against All Odds was like that as well, where I kind of fictionized it. It was also very much inspired by there was this quote in a movie that I watched, which I thought was fantastic, and that inspired me for like the lyric beginnings of this song. It was do you know the movie Heathers? It's like,
I'm sorry, no.
No, okay. No. But it was like this 80s movies where the quote came from. And so it is a story from a relationship perspective. So, you know, it could be about basically any type of relationship that you go back into, maybe, you know, against better judgment. But for me, it was really special. The thing that gave it like oh my God, I really feel this flavor, was the fact that I was planning to go to, like, at that point, I was planning to go back onto the stage, you know, and I was kind of terrified. So it's like fiction, but I always make sure that the real feeling is there, because I also feel like if the real feeling is not there, then you won't be able to hear it from the song, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. What was the feeling then behind, like you already mentioned it, the Phantom Touch?
Oh, I was feeling just very, very anxious. I know that everything should be all right, but but I'm still, I know I have been fine, but it feels like the world could cut the ground beneath my feet if I don't hold my breath. That was kind of that's like in the lyrics of the first verse. And that was basically how I was feeling at that moment. And what I tied it to was there's this Victorian short story by Charlotte Perkins, another Charlotte. It's called The Yellow Wallpaper. And it's basically about You know, back in Victorian times, if a woman was not complying with the standard of that time, they just put her away, and like, you know, the mad woman in the attic or the woman in the basement. And in this case, it was a woman that was put away because she wanted more freedoms than she was allowed at that moment. And she slowly went crazy and saw women behind the wallpapers. And I thought that that was a beautiful piece of fiction to put around the thing that was pulling up my chest at that moment. Yeah.
And well, you mentioned Victorian times. Let's go back way back more. Botticelli, the Venus.
Yeah.
What during the writing of this song, Venus Rising, or maybe composing it, or maybe prior to composing it, did that image come into your mind? Or maybe you actually saw it, I don't know, the image.
Yeah, I saw it a couple of times in real life. Very grateful to have seen it. I wrote it in the week that in Holland this big The Voice scandal happened. And that after that, like in the aftermath of that coming out, like obviously a lot of responsibility was put with these women by certain people. And that was this was so very frustrating to, well, I hope most people watching. And I was at that point, I was in like I put myself on a little writing camp. I was like in this little cabin in the woods, and I took with me things that inspire me. So I took like a book of my favorite poems. I took a book of my favorite paintings, and I was looking at the painting of the Venus, the Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli, and then I thought about how great it was that through all of these centuries, I mean, I know that she's like an ideal beauty image of her time, and that, you know, you can make it problematic if you want, but still, it was kind of a comforting idea for me that like over the centuries, she'd never had to change. She'd never had to cover up or expose herself more, or be bigger or smaller or louder or more soft-spoken. And, you know, with the scandal, like the centuries of guilt and shame, but Venus rises, that she was kind of, it was just at that point, it was a comforting image to me to see her like in this kind of perpetual move and rise to power. And yeah, and that was a nice image to focus and hold on to in the light of everything that was happening at that moment. So.
How far have we come? I mean, you mentioned the Voice scandal.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic about equality and not so biased anymore, or?
Honestly, not really. I mean, look at what's happening in Iran. Look at what's happening to reproductive rights. And this is something that I got a lot of comments after the first record, mostly like comments of people saying like, oh yeah, another woman writing about women's stuff. And, you know, feminism is over and we don't need it anymore. And if you look at a song like Toxic, for example, which literally has like the while a woman fights for autonomy, that was written before the whole Roe v. Wade thing happened. And so I am sad that it only became more relevant in like the very short time between that it was written and that it was released. So yeah, of course, a lot of great things have changed, and like the Me Too movement is a big factor in that. And I really do think that has led to some kind of culture shift where people realize that, you know, it's not okay. You cannot get away with everything. So I definitely don't want to sound like uber pessimistic, but yeah, I feel like there is work to do very
There's
much.
still work to do, but I think because of the Me Too movement, I think the scandal with The Voice could come out. I think, don't you think so? Because of you need steps and small step, but I think each step needs the step before.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
true. Yeah, there's
yeah,
definitely been movements, important movements in here that I don't feel like they necessarily are preventing it from happening yet, but it is making that shift happen where it's no longer something that everyone kind of looks away from. And I think that that's a very important change.
That's what I mean. The last song that I would like to discuss is with the word "final" in it. The Final Roadtrip. Yeah, what was it inspired due to lockdown and well that you were recording the songs on your own? Was it something that triggered that or not?
It was, yeah, it was, in a way, it was. The song is very much about needing a break, but it's also about, it's basically about taking a trip at the end times. So vacationing at the apocalypse. And this was the song, it was first released on Patreon in the summer, right after or before, I'm not entirely sure, but I was in the mindset of finding a place where we could like take a little place and just put a tent in the back of the car and go camping, like where we didn't have to, because that was during partial lockdown. I think at that point, like camping was okay because because it's in the open air. So it was really weird, like this, where can we go under the restrictions that, and of course that's a very, it's not a nice scenario, but it's an interesting scenario to kind of blow up and make a song out of, I guess. Yeah.
I think if you take a look at the last Delain album, it's called Apocalypse and Chill.
Yeah.
And it's also the theme of apocalypse. Is it something that inspires you? Is it something that you think about often?
Yeah, yeah. And actually for a couple of years already, I feel like for the last couple of years, the whole theme of things are really going to shit has been it has been close. I feel like I mean 2020 was especially gnarly, but I feel like there's been I feel like we kind of start every year with, well, nothing's gonna top last year, and then it kind of does. Yeah, I hope it's not a trend. I hope it's something that we can kind of.
Well, but I mean, I think it's something that you think about more than I think maybe 10 or 12 years ago, for example, maybe lyric wise or maybe theme wise.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's what a pandemic and like a climate crisis and growing into an adult will do to you. Yeah. I've been an adult for a while, but I mean, it's still, yeah, yeah.
No, but I think I think that's something is it something that you are scared of maybe, or is it something that you are not scared of and just observing, or what is your own personal feeling about it? Is this something that really scares you, or is it something you think, well, mankind is still clever enough and not stupid enough to really let it end, or but?
Oh, I think as a species we're pretty stupid, but we're intelligent species, but also very much focused on like short-term gains, so to speak. I don't know. I don't know if it's something that I think about a lot. I'm pretty much I think it's pretty hard for me to keep focus on something anyway. Like, and the moments that I have focus are usually when I'm working on either, uh, lyrics or music, and on those rare moments that I stop and contemplate, then it's usually like, yeah, what will happen and what will a future look like. And Utopia actually had a different title when I wrote it for the very first time. It's a very old song. It's the first song. It's the very first Patron song. Actually, the working title of that song was Apocalypse and Chill when I wrote it. And then we were working on the Delain album, and I was like, no, this title fits better with the album than with the song. So I had to rename the song because, but that, yeah, the working title was Apocalypse and Chill, and it was very much about what will happen. I like to think as time goes by, the oak will grow. I like to think as time goes by. So it was about what will kind of happen beyond humanity. And then also we will not unlock our hands. It's the end, but we won't unlock our hands. So it's maybe it's kind of romanticizing it even a tiny little bit. But so yeah, it's been on my mind for a bit. Maybe more than I realize if I talk about it right now. But I also think I always think that it's on everyone's mind, but maybe that's not the case. But it's
Well, like you were saying, I think it has also something to do with if you have the time to contemplate and if you have the time to let it all sink in. And
yeah.
I think most people don't have the time or don't allow themselves the time to actually.
No, and I feel like if you go and you write songs, or you're like a writer, or you're a painter, or you're it's kind of your job to contemplate and then make something out of it. So when I do contemplate, it's often one of the first things that come to mind. Yeah. I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. Strange bridge, but let's make it. Utopia, future. For you, the sound. What do you think? What do these two albums, these 2 years of writing a song every month? What do they tell you about your future musical course that you want to take?
That's a great question. I've been thinking about this myself, because right now, like, I'm kind of taking liberty every month to say what kind of song is this going to be. I very much make it a goal for myself to not have a goal in terms of like genre. So whatever the idea is, it can just be there, and I'm not going to bend it to be heavier or poppier or and because of that, I have now been able to explore like a wide range of styles and things, and see which things I like most. And yeah, I guess for me, as much as for everyone else, it's kind of the question, like, if I make an album after this, and it is going to be like not another compilation, but it's going to be like a studio album where I do think about how the songs are cohesive together, and if it's going to have like one overall sound and what sound that is going to be. I am not entirely sure about that, but I do think that doing, like, at this point 31 different songs in, well, I wouldn't say 31 different styles, but in a lot of different styles, kind of help me explore and see which things I do like most. At this point, it's still quite eclectic what I would like to do. So I think it's going to be like the big question for me, like creatively, is how I'd want to do that kind of album, and whether I want to find a sound, or whether it's still going to be or whether it's still going to be like such an eclectic mix. But I do think that if you're making an entire album, you can make certain choices, like, you know, you can do similar drum sounds for the songs, or like there's a lot of ways in which you can still write very diverse songs, but do make them mesh together as an album. So I think this is going to be the big question. But,
Okay, so
but it has helped me like do a lot of things that I like, and also some things where I think like, oh, that was fun, but I don't have to do it again. Like that's also helpful. Like I got that out of my system.
okay, well then for the people who watch, is there one thing that you have got out of your system, and that, well, you say it was nice to do, but I won't, not in the near future, won't do it again?
Well, I've been. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's mean. It never say never, of course, but I've.
That's why I said at least the first couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to answer it, and if you don't want to pinpoint yourself, then it's okay too, of course. Yeah.
No. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think I.
Let's
I don't want to
leave
make promises I cannot keep.
Well, but well, what are your plans then for the near future? Meaning, well, with this album, does the show that you did, does it give you enough information to maybe to pursue a tour, Europe or maybe Netherlands or?
Yeah, I like when I planned this show, I've given myself permission to not plan like the chapter after that until I know what the show is going to be like. Also for very practical reasons, like I you know what kind of songs work. You have a better insight of how you want your stage, what kind of show it is, what kind of crew you need for that, what kind of budget you need for that. So I have a lot of more pieces to the puzzle if I wanted to put like a tour together now, or if, you know, so this has definitely helped. I do want to do more shows. Like before, like this show had a lot of work in it, and I thought it can go either way. It can either go like, okay, that was fun and now I want to sleep for a year, or it can be like, okay, that was fun, I want to do it again tomorrow. And I definitely fell to that was fun, I want to do it again tomorrow side. So we'll start planning that soon. There's no dates yet, but yeah.
Looking forward to it. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And well, see you next time.
See you next time.